Welcome to this edition of Transformation Thursday. As always, we are so grateful and thankful that you thought it good to join us for another edition of Transformation Thursday. I want to welcome Dr. Chappelle with us. As always, it's good to be in this space. And so again, we thank you for joining us. Christopher, some years ago, you and I were sitting in the lab at the Southern University Agricultural Research and Extension Center. And before that, you and I, we had been preparing for some guests that were visiting the Ag Center and visiting various labs to hear about some of the work that the scientists were doing. And we were preparing to share our research, preparing to share what we had been doing in the lab, what we had been working on. And I remember sitting in the lab and waiting for her guests to come and waiting for our then Vice Chancellor for Research to show up and visit our lab and to share what those great things that we were doing. After some time, we realized that we were forgotten or simply just left out. And I don't know if you can recall that, but I was extremely disappointed. But even more so, I think I was a little bit hurt. And I can recall telling you a little bit later, sitting in that same lab, Christopher, I'm waiting on my next. And I was waiting on God to do something different. I was waiting on him to move me from a place of obscurity to a place of significance. I was waiting on him to move me higher, waiting on him to do what I knew he had promised that he would do. I was waiting on him to move me into my destiny. What I didn't know at that time, but what I came to understand a little bit better later, was that sometimes God hides you for a season. Sometimes God hides you for a season. In 1 Samuel chapter 16, God instructs Samuel to go down to the house of Jesse. And there, God says, you will find my king. If you read that chapter, the text says that upon arrival, Samuel instructs Jesse to present all of his sons, and God would choose from those sons a king. And the text goes on to say that Jesse presented 7 of his 8 sons. And one by one, God instructed Samuel that that's not the one. The first one passed by, God said, that's not the one. The second and the third and so on and so forth, all of them passed by. And God said, that's neither of those are my king. They were handsome, they were strong, they were smart, they were the older in the clan, but yet they each were denied. And Samuel would ask Jesse, do you have any other sons? Because none of these are the one. And Jesse would reply, I have one more. But you can't be talking about him. He's young and he's ready and he's tending the sheep. He has a mediocre job and he's a young one of the crew. So you can't be talking about him. But despite how young or how old you are, and despite what you look like or what you have, despite what side of the track you grew up on, the text says that God looks at the heart. In other words, what God has for you is for you. David was chosen, but he was hidden. He was anointed to be the king, but he was hidden. And sometimes God hides us while he's preparing us. Sometimes he hides us while he is preparing us. And sometimes in the midst of us being hidden, it doesn't feel good. We feel like the ones that are ostracized and overlooked. And we feel like the ones that are in those dark places, trying to butt out, but we're being hidden. Our talents are being hidden. Our skills are being hidden. That thing that's on the inside of us, that God has placed on the inside of us, we're being hidden while he's preparing us. And so the question that I have for you tonight or today, Christopher, is what do you do when you're being hidden?
I think the one thing through your experience, through David's story, that sticks out is that at the time, they didn't know about, or you all didn't know about what was going on behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what he was found doing and what you were found doing was the most important thing that anybody can do in that situation. And that's the work. He was out in the field.
Yeah.
You were in the lab. Both doing the work. Although man are the ones who we would like to recognize it, may not immediately see that which has and hold value, but God sees.
That's it.
And that's the important part, is that if we're working as if we're working for the Lord and we're pleasing him, it doesn't matter the disappointment and all that other kind of stuff. You continue to hone your craft, you continue to do the work, and at the right time, in the right season, in the right moment, it has to work out. Look, I don't know if you ever picked fruit before it was ripe. It just doesn't taste as good.
Yeah, that's right.
It's often bitter. The pectins hasn't broken down yet. The sweetness hasn't come through. So you could have found yourself in that place and you could have stayed bitter, but you continue to do the work and allow the process to happen and the pectins to develop, and then there lies the sweetness. There lies the gift in life. So that's my thought.
Yeah, I like that. I'm gonna take that analogy and then add another one to it. I don't know if you remember, but years ago, I remember going into different classes with elementary kids, and one of the activities that I often like to show them, which people do it all the time, is that I had picked up these little seeds, these sunflower seeds, and then I got a little bit of soil and these styrofoam cups. And I gave each of the kids a styrofoam cup. We put some soil in it. And then I gave them this seed. And we instructed them to put the seed in the soil and cover it up. Now, because it was covered up in this soil and you really couldn't see it, you didn't know what was happening beneath the soil. You didn't know, and they didn't know what was taking place beneath the soil. They knew that they planted a seed. They knew something was planted, but they didn't know what was happening because it took some days before that seed actually began to do something, and they began to see something, because sometimes we don't see what God is doing because it's covered. And sometimes it's covered in what would appear to be a difficult situation or darkness. But that seed has everything it needs to be all that God has called it to be. And it always would be interesting after a few days when the kids would come back and they would look, and all of a sudden that little seed has now turned into something. Is now turned into a plant. It took some time before that happened. It took some obscure moments, and it took some dark places before that happened, but it eventually happened. Because preparation takes place often when no one sees it.
That's it. Hey, I think it was Fraser, right? Says, I think it was him. I'm not sure. But you become the champion in the dark of the night.
Yeah.
You get highlighted under the bright lights after. This is me paraphrasing, but you get recognized in the bright of the lights, but the real action takes place in the dark of the night.
Yeah.
When you put it in the work and no one can see, no one can recognize. And sometimes in going through that process, you may even wonder if what I'm doing is really worthwhile. Work.
Yeah, like that.
All it is just work.
Yeah.
It's the where the refining happens, where the purification happens, and then there's that moment where the work is recognized, but it's not just recognized. Hear me on this one. It's not just recognized because you decide to say, okay, I'm gonna now make everybody recognize.
Yeah.
Nah. See, when you do it and you have that anointing and that blessing on it, the Bible says that your gift will make room, and what that really means is that others will recognize. God will cause them to see what has been there. God will cause them to pour in to something that they otherwise would have passed up on. So, man, it's all about respecting that seed. It's all about respecting that seed, that gift that God has given you, and continue to nurture that thing regardless to what it looks like today, because tomorrow we know what the promise looked like. The oak didn't become an oak without the acorn. So you have to go through the process.
Yeah, you always think about that, and I know you watch boxing and MMA and all of those things. The fight is always won before you get in the ring. It's always won before you get in the ring. You look at that story of David, and then you follow the next chapter in chapter 17 where David appears before Goliath, and he's questioned by Saul as to his preparation to even be there. And David said, my Lord, I saved my father's sheep from both the lion and the bear. I killed them both with my bare hands. This fight with Goliath is just simple. It's similar to that. In other words, David said, God has prepared me for this moment. He's prepared me for this moment. And some of you listening are simply being prepared. You thought you were overlooked, but you were being prepared. You thought God had forgotten about you, but you're simply being prepared. You thought you didn't have what it takes, but you're simply being prepared. You thought the past was preventing you of what you dreamed, but you were being, and some of us are still being prepared for that moment.
Absolutely. One of the things that if we were working in a different setting and we were actually doing the training, we would start at this point talking about transferable skills. Right? Because God doesn't allow you to go through or experience something without that being a benefit for it to transfer into your next. When Saul became Paul, he didn't leave Saul behind. He took those skills that he had in that place and transferred those skills into the new place. When you see David and he give his resume of success, it was to be taken so it could be applied and used in the place where God was taking him, where he was leading him.
Yeah.
In the same way for each and every one of us and our listening audience, God has given you an experience so that you can leverage that experience so that you can fulfill a destiny that he has already assigned.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the very reason why Paul states in Romans chapter 8, and you're very familiar with that all things work for good. And he's not just talking about all the good things, all the good experiences in your life. He's talking about even the bad experiences, those dark moments of your life, your life, those midnight hours of your life. He's talking about both the good and the bad, that he can take all of that, make it work for your good. They become a part of your experience, and they become a part of your tool set that allows you to be what he would have you to be.
Can't say it any better. That's the key. Leverage your life.
That's it.
Use everything that God has given you. So
That's it. That's it. I think that's a fitting place for us as we come to a close and affirm on this Transformation Thursday that I'm being prepared for my moment. I'm being prepared for my moment, and I will leverage every experience to bring God glory and to walk into my destiny and the promises that God has for me. I'm being prepared. That's our thought on this edition of Transformation Thursday. See you next week.